So everybody can hear me? Yep. Okay, fantastic. I'm going to get started. This meeting is being held in Boggy, unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq since time immemorial. This meeting is held with love and respect to the land, the water, and the people. We all bear the responsibilities of peace and friendship treaties as we are all treaty people. We're here to present some facts and explain some of the potential impacts of uranium exploration in our communities. My name is AJ. I'm a layperson, non-expert, concerned resident. We have Brad Redden in the back. He's a former geologist with industry experience in Labrador, actually looking for this uranium stuff. There will be a video presentation as well from Dr. Catherine Turvin from CAPE, that's Canadian Association for Physicians for the Environment. And we also have Councillor for District 6 here, Alison Smith, who I think will say a few words as well. Okay, so my name is AJ. I moved back to Nova Scotia a few years ago with my wife. We have an amazing 2-year-old son named Cannon, who was born in South Shore. It's a rocky start, but we got to keep him. Cannon was born with Down syndrome. Unfortunately, that makes him 20 times more likely to develop leukemia in his lifetime. That's a baseline without elevated levels of uranium in our water. Leukemia is one of the many illnesses associated with uranium activity in places where the government has failed its people. I had to come here tonight to advocate for my son because when given the opportunity, our representatives in government did not. Here's what we know. The province of Nova Scotia was explored for uranium starting in the 40s and on throughout the 70s. In 1981, Nova Scotians said no to uranium exploration, citing safety and environmental concerns. March 26th of this year, the provincial government lifted a 4-decade-old moratorium on uranium exploration in Nova Scotia after ramming Bill C-6 through the legislature. The moratorium a lot of you fought hard for. None of you voted to lift it. It wasn't on his mandate. May 14th, government announced they want to bring uranium to market from Nova Scotia, so they add uranium to our critical minerals list. The critical minerals list is the big online menu the government puts online for the world to see what they can come and mine for in Nova Scotia. That same day, May 14th, they announced an RFP. That's a request for proposal. So prospectors submitted proposals to come to Nova Scotia so the government can verify the quantity and quality of the uranium up in East Dalhousie and 2 other sites. This is uranium that they have already verified the quality and the quantity of between the 40s and the 70s. June 11th, that's today, the RFP closed. It was open for less than a month. So I don't know if any of you have ever applied for permits or have you ever gotten a response from the government in less than a month? This is how long they left the request for proposals open for the entire world to submit a proposal to come and mine for uranium in Nova Scotia. It's a little suspect. By July 11th, so 1 month from today, someone is going to get a 2-year exploration license on a 158-acre segment. From what I understand, is mostly private land up in East Dalhousie. So these are the locations for the RFP that they're being honest about and that we know about. River John and Pictou, Falls Lake in Hants County, and East Dalhousie Cherryfield. So we went from just over 3 months, we went from a total ban on uranium in Nova Scotia to someone prospecting for uranium just down the road, starting in just a few weeks. Not a single politician asked a single one of you how you felt about it. Not Houston, not Tory Rushton, not Susan Corcoran. These are the active RFPs, right? This is, allegedly, there are several others. We've seen a clip on the internet that strongly indicates the company coming to do the exploration already has targets all over the province. So now we're getting on to the scary stuff. This is the East Dalhousie project area. Okay, so this up in the corner may be difficult to see. That's the lower 60 Lake. All of this is the project area. Okay, so all of that is area that they can potentially explore for uranium in. So one of the areas marked for exploration of this radioactive, incredibly toxic, seriously hazardous heavy metal is in East Dalhousie. It's right next to Mac Lake, Lake Torment, and it's at the top of the LaHave River watershed. If you dump a cup of water into Lower 60 Lake, eventually, over time, that will drain into the LaHave River. That's just the way it works. That's how watersheds work. Everything we dump in our properties inside of this, and I'll show you the watershed. If you live inside that watershed, when you pollute your ground, you're polluting the lake. This whole thing is raising health, environmental, and property value concerns across the province. It's not just us worried about this. Too many resources to list tell us this can't be done safely where people live, especially at the top of our watershed. Okay? So everybody inside of here is threatened by what's happening at East Dalhousie. And really the whole province is. The LaHave dumps into the sea. Okay, so our fishers, everyone that works the sea, everyone that works the shore, we're all under threat. Everything in the green, like I said, drains into the LaHave. If they think there's uranium under your woodlot, they're going to tear it up looking for it with or without your permission. Tory Rushton has already used Section 26 of the Mineral Resources Act to override property rights. He did it in February looking for lithium. Okay, so he has already told the person your property rights mean nothing. Okay, and they've begun bulldozing or sinking drill holes or whatever on this person's property. He fought back. The province fought harder. Like I said, in February they did that, and this is a quote from Tory Rushton. I'll only use Section 26 if negotiations with property owners become stagnant. So he'll only force you if you say no the first time. Okay? Why is everyone up in arms? Well, it's uranium. Okay? It causes cancer risk radiation. It leaves behind radioactive tailings. Those tailings are hazardous for over 10,000 years. That's debatable. 10, maybe 15,000 years. Here in Nova Scotia, we have 69 abandoned mines. 67 of them still require assessment. 60 of them need cleanup. We, as Nova Scotian taxpayers, are on the hook for the bill. $158 million bill. We're on the hook for it right now. You all are going to pay that down. Everybody here. That's without large-scale uranium operations going on in the province. Uranium hasn't been looked at here since 1981. That $150 million is just for the tailings that you stumble across when you're out in the woods in Blockhouse, or any of these places where the gold mining took place, and there's arsenic tailings all over this province. $158 million to clean that up. Port Hope, Ontario houses the largest uranium milling site in the country. It's still operational. It's going on right now. They're $214 million deep into their cleanup. It was supposed to be a 2-year cleanup, and it was an 8-year cleanup. Now it's a 4-decade cleanup, and they're starting to talk about an indefinite cleanup. So it will not end. It will be going on forever. They're $214 million deep into the taxpayer. There is no end in sight at that cleanup. The province is using the Saskatchewan model to sell uranium mining in Nova Scotia. The problem is, in Saskatchewan, the closest mine is 600 kilometers from the nearest home. 600 kilometers from the nearest home. Ours, in East Dalhousie, will be at the end of the Stanburn Road, 19.3 kilometers from exactly where you're sitting right now. So in Saskatchewan, you have a 600-kilometer exclusion zone between you and the uranium. Here, we will have 19.3 kilometers between us and the uranium. People in East Dalhousie will have hundreds of meters. This uranium exploration project is being put on top of us. You can fit the entire, okay, so this is the Cigar Lake site in northern Saskatchewan. It's 2.5 kilometers from here to here. It's massive. That doesn't include the airstrip that they have, okay? These sites are massive. These are tailings ponds, okay? They're lined sometimes with like a biotech fabric, sometimes with an impermeable layer, sometimes just with rock. Sometimes they just rely on the geology. because the granite's impermeable. So we could just dig a hole in the granite and stick the tailings in that. You could fit the entire lower portion of our province into the uranium mining area in northern Saskatchewan. You could cut off the bottom of Nova Scotia, drop it into northern Saskatchewan, and we would just fill the footprint of their mining operations. Coopers and Schmidt, the Wismut report, tell us that the effective area of cancer clusters could reach as far away as 400 kilometers. So you guys with family and friends in PEI, New Brunswick, this concerns them as well. So if they don't know about it, they probably should. Tell your friends. There are cancer clusters all the way down the route, 6,000 kilometer route from Port Radium in the Northwest Territories, where they started mining radium and uranium in the 50s. Cancer clusters along a 6,000 kilometer route all the way to the milling plant in Port Hope, Ontario. From the Northwest Territories down to Ontario, cancer clusters all the way along. Anywhere the trucks stop to rest is a cancer cluster. That's just the ore being transported down the road. That's not having a uranium site in your town, okay? That's just trucks driving by. That's dust, that's radon off-gas. Okay, this is extremely hazardous stuff. Port Hope, Ontario, 50,000 trees are slated for the saw. They've got to take down the canopy so they can get to the dirt underneath people's homes. The way it was described to me is they're just chasing the contamination. So they take a bucket up, they send it to a lab, they take another bucket, they send it to a lab, they're just chasing the dirt. They're digging up Port Hope. There won't be a Port Hope left by the time this is done. A gentleman stood up at the late call meeting we had the other night and he asked, what about the jobs? What about the economy? It's true, it'll create some jobs, some contracts to run cable, maybe oils. Maybe Gerhardt's would move some earth while they build it. Some shutdown work for some of you contractors here and there every couple of years. Will that be worth the perpetual cost and human toll we live with every day trying to clean it up? Wondering if radon is coming across the wind every time the wind blows? That would be some work, let me tell you. There's 1,088 people that work at the Key Lake mine in northern Saskatchewan. 54% of them are actually from northern Saskatchewan. The rest of them are what they call long-term contractors. They're all from away. They're not even from the nation. These are mining experts from Europe, from Australia, from the big conglomerate countries that mine. We're one of them. We're doing this to other countries as well. I took this directly off of Camco's website. This is McArthur River, Key Lake, between the two, 2,010 people employed. They're proud of this fact. 54% of Camco's workforce is from northern Saskatchewan, and they think they're bringing jobs to northern Saskatchewan. They destroyed 3 towns, by the way, just to put the mine in. Those towns are no longer there. You can Google them. Google Earth, Indian Village. It'll drop you on top of the mine. I actually encourage you to do it. Just the bird's eye view of the mine is terrifying. Look at the color of the tailings pond. I encourage you. Virginia court upholds uranium ban. Virginia is much like Nova Scotia. We have a lot in common. A rich mining history. Virginia is a coal vein. They love to pull rocks out of the ground in Virginia. You are born with a shovel in your hand in Virginia. Virginia will not mine uranium. They banned it, okay? The companies come back, they ban it again. Why? It rains too much in Virginia for uranium to be mined safely. I'll give you one guess. Give me one place in the world it rains more than it rains in Virginia. Right? Okay? We had 1,600 millimeters last year. Their record is 14. Like, it's a no-brainer. This cannot be done safely in our province. Everything is telling us. If Virginia, with its vast wealth of mining knowledge and experience, won't mine it, what makes us think that we can do it safely? We can't. What can you do? So, we've got all the information. We know who you need to call, who you need to write, and who you need to approach. I'm saying call, write, approach, repeat. Don't stop. If you've written emails, you haven't written enough. If you've called, you haven't called enough. Make your feelings known. I invited Susan Corcoran Greek tonight. She was busy. Okay, I think this is pretty important. I encourage you to approach these people in public. Our MLAs are at our pancake breakfast. They're enjoying our festivals. Don't let them out of their car. Approach them and tell them how you feel. I'm not saying be rude. I'm not saying to accost people in public. It's counterproductive. Be polite and be firm and tell them that you don't want a goddamn uranium mine in your county, okay? Talk to your neighbors. Do things multiple times. It's a lot harder to ignore it if you keep doing it. For those of you that get a letter from the province or from the prospectors, some of you own woodlots up in East Dalhousie, and you're going to get a letter. This is real. It's happening. It's already happened. We have an example. I'm sorry I don't have one to show you, but the letters are going out. If you get a letter from the province or a prospector, say no. Say no. Tell them to take a hike. Burn the letter. If the province calls, tell them no. Make the province intervene. If the ministry has to get involved in every single property, it will be a quagmire they want nothing to do with. We need to make this as politically toxic as humanly possible. It's the only way out of this. I intend to have a follow-up meeting here in New Germany. This will probably be the information sessions are tapering down. The next meeting that I intend to have here in New Germany is going to help you prepare yourselves and your property for what's coming. I've got a presentation on the importance and the specifics of well water testing from Fred Bonner. We're going to go over your rights, and we're going to go over how to take and establish baselines for yourself and your home for the amount of radiation in the background right now. It is something that should be done. If they begin exploring for radiation, we'll need to have data backing up that they're impacting our community. Action is coming. At a couple of the meetings, we've heard people, what can we do right now tonight? We want to do something. We need to fill our boots and get going here. Action is coming. We encourage people to join the Facebook group. It's called Citizens Against Uranium Exploration and Mining in Nova Scotia. We need to fill that group. There's good information in there, valuable information. It's up to date. There's a couple thousand of us in there adding stuff every day, and you can find events like this and other ways you can help. We're fundraising, so we've got some jars at the door. I want to be upfront with everyone. The money that we raise tonight, cash we raise here in New Germany, is going to go towards a bulk order of signage so that we can purchase and distribute those signs cost-free to everyone around here who wants one. We need to placard this place like crazy when the MLAs drive around, when Houston drives around. We want them running into these signs everywhere. Okay, we need to make the province a bunch of little stop signs like the one in the corner, no to uranium mining. Signs right now are about $10. Stickers are a donation. For here in New Germany, like I said, we are trying to get an order of at least 200, and we will distribute them cost-free to anybody that wants them. Again, like I said, action is coming. So look on the tables, you'll see mailing lists. We have a mailing list. I want to sign. I want to volunteer. We're also doing a mailing list. So if you want up-to-date information, ways you can help, sign up for the mailing list. Also, if anyone knows a lawyer, we are seeking a path to an injunction to stop this thing legally dead in its tracks. So if anyone has a mother-in-law that was a big city lawyer, we would love to hear from them. Putting a lawyer on retainer is going to cost us thousands of dollars right off the bat. That's for somebody to even answer the phone. If we can get someone to do it pro bono, or even advise us on a pathway to an injunction, that would be extremely valuable at this point. That's where we are. We're getting close to the end of information and spreading the word, and we will begin taking action. So sign up for the mailing list. There's no upside here. Once we turn this thing on, we cannot turn it off. It will be with us forever. Thank you. That's all I have to say. And we're going to do a quick video from Catherine Chervin, and then we'll have a quick talk from Brad, and then we'll do some questions from you guys, and we'll do some community involvement as well at the end.
you to all of you for...
Catherine Chervin is a doctor with Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, instrumental in the first ban. These people have kept the organization alive on our behalf to protect us for exactly this moment. We thought this was dead. They've come back to help out. They're all exhausted. They've been burning the candle at both ends, again, on our behalf. So we're extremely fortunate that she was able to make us a video last night on short notice. So anyways, I'm sure.
Thank you to all of you for coming to the meeting in New Germany tonight. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person. My name is Catherine Chervin, Kathy Chervin. I'm a retired family doctor, a mother, a grandmother, and a member of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, also known as CAPE. CAPE is nonpartisan, led by physicians, and we have over 36,000 supporters across the country. We focus on health and the environment and bring credible evidence-based perspectives to the issue of uranium mining. Cape Nova Scotia has more than 100 physicians and other healthcare providers as members across the province. As a family doctor and a grandmother, I say no to uranium mining because, first, uranium mining is dangerous and unnecessary. Second, our beautiful environment, air, forests, rivers, and coasts, is key to the health and prosperity of our province and foundational to health of the people. We need to protect our environment from radioactive contamination. And third, the treaty rights of the Mi'kmaq peoples have been ignored throughout this whole process. So why is uranium exploration and mining dangerous? First of all, even exploration for uranium can release radon gas from drilling and drill cores. And when uranium is mined and removed from the ore, 85% of the radioactive elements are left behind in the tailings. And they release radioactive particles for tens of thousands of years. The particles bind to dust, get washed into the water supply, and then into the food chain, including our fruits, vegetables, mammals, and fish, and are then consumed by humans. You may know that radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer in Canada, and that's why we're all encouraged to check and monitor our basements and homes for radon gas. And in addition to lung and other cancers, radon causes emphysema, kidney disease, reduction in bone growth, infertility, and birth defects. It also disproportionately harms women and children. Now, we hear from mining companies that mines are safer now and that we can rely on the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission as the guardian of health and safety. But the Commission reports to Natural Resources Canada, which promotes uranium mining. It does not report to Health Canada or Environment and Climate Change Canada, both of which are far better placed to study and protect human and environmental health. There's a clear conflict of interest here. Also, under the Commission, permissible levels of radon in Canada, i.e. what the industry is allowed to release into the environment, are twice as high as many other countries and twice as high as what the World Health Organization recommends. Mining companies also promote methods such as in situ leaching, which do not create tailings or waste rock. However, in situ leaching is similar to fracking. It involves drilling holes into an ore body and using explosives or hydraulic fracturing to create open pathways into which a leaching, usually an acid solution, is pumped. And according to Dr. Stephen Emmerman, a scientist, a geophysicist, and retired university professor, this fluid will leach all kinds of other elements in addition to uranium, some of them highly toxic, such as arsenic, and there's a high risk of the solution spreading and contaminating the groundwater, so that uranium may appear in someone's well. So, why is uranium mining unnecessary? First, there's no shortage of uranium in the world. Second, nuclear energy is not needed to combat climate change. Renewable energy is now cheaper than oil and gas, and renewable energy projects are easier and cheaper to build. In short, nuclear energy is too slow to build, too expensive, and too risky. And thirdly, there's no need for more uranium to provide medical isotopes, which are radioactive materials used in diagnosis or treatment. Those isotopes can be produced by cyclotrons or small research reactors. Fourth, we do not need more exploration to know where uranium is in Nova Scotia. There was enough exploration in the 60s and 70s to let us know where the uranium exists. And finally, in terms of job creation, we know that renewable energy industries provide far more jobs without the risks associated with nuclear energy. Most mines take years to develop and then have relatively short lifespans, while the harms and costs to taxpayers last for generations. I know that we all share a love of our province and a commitment to future generations. We should not explore or mine uranium and create 1,000-year hazardous waste, but invest in green and sustainable futures for our children, grandchildren, and all subsequent generations. So what can you do? Please educate yourself. There's a website, Know Uranium, K-N-O-W. Read our fact sheets on our website at cape.ca. Read the Ecology Action fact sheets on their website. Tell your friends and family. Speak or write to your MLA. Sign our petition. Get a bumper sticker or a lawn sign. Join a protest. And remember, the best place for uranium is in the ground, in stable, undisturbed, relatively harmless deposits. Thank you, and I wish you a good meeting.
Okay, so that was Dr. Turbin. Okay, I just wanted to mention that while I'm bashing government and our MLAs here, there are 4 councillors from the municipality of the District of Lunenburg here this evening. So we appreciate that they came to the meeting. We're going to have Allison Smith come up and say a few words. She's from District 6.
How's this? Like this? Okay, great. Thanks everybody for coming out. Again, firstly, I'd like to thank the organizers of this evening. This is my 3rd community meeting I've been to so far, and they're well organized. Lots of people speaking up, hundreds of people coming out. And I just want to thank the organizers because I know it's really turned everybody's lives upside down, and we really appreciate it. As AJ said, I'm from the municipality. I'm a councillor in District 6, and we have Kathy Moore here from District 5, and we have Casey DeLong from District 8, sorry. And we have Morgan Reinhardt from District 1. So you've got good coverage here in our municipality. And I'm just going to go through a few of the things that we're doing as a municipal council out of concern and to represent our residents. So we're really taking this step by step. And one thing that I've learned over the past month is that because there's been a moratorium in place so long, people aren't super equipped to respond. And I think that's one of the concerns with the moratorium being lifted and the RFPs moving so quickly, is that even our nonprofits are saying to us, we're still learning. Like, for example, the Ecology Action Center, their people are still trying to get educated and equipped to answer people's questions. But the moratorium's been in place, and we haven't had to have this knowledge and understanding, and we don't know how it's going to play out. So we're all learning, and it's so great to see everybody here doing that. It's helpful to know that in 2008, our municipality voted for a permanent ban on uranium mining in Nova Scotia. Kathy Moore, who's sitting here, voted for that. And you may see us getting to a stronger position like that in time. But I think it's really helpful to know that we've been here before and we've opposed it before. So when I first heard, it was a resident actually who alerted me to the fact that there was an RFP for uranium exploration in East Dalhousie, and that's in our watershed. So the first thing I did was I took it to council, I made a motion and asked for a staff report. And wasn't a unanimous vote, but we just needed a majority, and that went through. And that staff report will come back to us next week, and it will actually be available tomorrow online when our council package goes out. So what we asked for as a council was a staff report on the effects of uranium exploration and mining in the LaHave River watershed. So we tried to keep it kind of tight. It's a huge topic, but watersheds are in municipal jurisdiction, so that's why we asked specifically about what effects it might have on the watershed. So while the staff have been working on that, the public has been making it clear that this is an enormous issue that people are concerned about. So unanimously, was it just last night? Last night, we passed a motion to write to the province to ask for a pause on the process for requests for proposals for uranium exploration in East Dalhousie. And we did that echoing a call from Pictou. And earlier in the day, Annapolis had made the same call at their council. And in the evening, as we were making the motion, West Hants made the motion as well. So, and it passed unanimously, and I've got to say, I'm really proud of our council because everyone spoke up, everyone wanted to speak to this, everyone gets the concerns, everyone feels like, knows that there should have been consultation. This should have, at bare minimum, been mentioned in an election so that we could have voted on it. And that is the bare minimum, considering the amount of public consultation and scientific study that went into establishing and keeping and putting into legislation that moratorium. So, as I said, I think you'll see us moving to a stronger position. I can't say right now until we discuss that as a council, but certainly my feeling is that the moratorium and bans never should have been lifted, particularly because there's been a lack of consultation with the Mi'kmaq. That's a deal breaker right there. So I mentioned the staff report will come out tomorrow. and strategy package. It gets posted online in the afternoon. And I just want to encourage everyone to keep up the education, keep talking to your neighbors, and keep reaching out to all 3 levels of government. Some people want to suggest that municipalities don't have any power in this, and it's true. We have no direct power to stop this or block it. But, as I said, we had voted to support a permanent ban in 2008, and so did many others, including the town of Wolfville, Chester, West Hants, town of Lunenburg, Windsor, Kings County, and Cumberland County. And there may be more, but that's the list I have so far. You can't tell me that municipalities were not instrumental in getting the government to put that legislation in place in 2009. And according to Jillian Thomas, someone who's been with this fight for a very, very long time, municipalities were also instrumental in getting the ban in place in BC. So I think we're going to stick with this. And the last thing I want to say is don't let the Premier divide us. There's been a lot of talk about special interests. And if I've seen anything and understood anything so far, is that this is a fight that unites us. I see people from every political persuasion stepping forward and saying, no, this is not okay the way this has happened. And frankly, I don't see any special interests in this room. I see a common interest to fight for the protection of our environment, our health, our future, and I see people calling for solidarity with the Mi'kmaq who should have been consulted and should be consulted going forward. So thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing from Brad Redden.
Okay, so Brad's going to come up and do a little talk, then we'll do some questions, and then we've got a quick talk on the Everwind project after we'll do some questions. Basically, we'll do that right after questions. Okay. Thank you.
So I'm going to start with a joke because it's like, what has 2 thumbs and stayed up till 4 o'clock in the morning reading uranium regulations? This guy. So in saying that, that means I'm very sleep deprived and I will probably be inappropriately making jokes because that way I'm less likely to cry in front of you. Emotional regulation is not my strong suit, but sure, that works. This is a slideshow that I borrowed from Elizabeth Foster, who presented in Lake Paul, and she presented in Tatton on Monday, I think. So I'm going to skip a bunch of slides and maybe things that Lake Paul, which is clearly not where we are. Before I forget, can we touch base about municipalities that had voted for this in the past? I had a conversation about today with the EAC. Sorry, and I'm probably going to pause for long periods of time while I try and figure out what I'm saying. So I guess we're going to start with some basic geology for you guys, like this Moggy, where we are here. So you guys, I think most of you know what granite looks like. It's kind of whitish, hard, not good to put your face against. And so the granites around here are actually sourced quite deep underground. And when we ran into Africa about 375 million years ago, and they slowly push up into the rocks above them. And when these granites cool, they're actually about 12 kilometers underground. And they don't kind of cool all at once. They cool, some of you may have put a beer in the freezer and left it there too long, and like half of it freezes, and the other half is still liquid. And if you're in a real rush, you drink that little bit that's not frozen yet, and it's maybe a little stronger than the rest. The same thing happens in rocks, that some stuff cools faster, and you end up with things that don't fall into minerals getting concentrated in other places. But uranium is one of these things that doesn't fit in most minerals, and so it ends up getting concentrated. You have most of the uranium deposits in these granites are kind of the last thing that solidified, which we'll kind of get to a little more here. And so then you have erosion because they push the rocks up on top of them as they rise, erosion, and then you end up with your granite sticking out kind of like this. And this is local, no, not that one. This one, there's local geology. So here is Cherryfield. Over there, that one is Villarbrook. Lake Paul, of course, because that's where the presentation was at. Anyways, these pinkish things are all granites. And then this is the Annapolis Valley up here. This would be the North Mountain. And you see there's different pinks, and that's actually, there's different granites out there if you're obsessive, compulsive rock nerd who wants to segregate everything into little groups that sometimes I even think are pretty arbitrary. Before we get too far, I need to say, so I have a degree in geology. I spent 3 years in industry, 1 year doing uranium exploration in Labrador. I was pretty good at what I did, but I found that the one thing that the industry exploited more than minerals was people, and so I thought I would go find somewhere that I actually like working. But I do desperately miss rocks. Having said that, I never got my professional geology certification, which means under the law, I am not a person of expertise. So I'm kind of your knowledgeable friend who, having been out of the industry for 12 years, has spent a couple of late nights reading stuff and helping you guys hopefully all understand this. This is a map of northern Saskatchewan, actually, and this, what is that? That is not a rectangle. That's an ellipse. That roughly covers the area of exploration in northern Ontario, northern Saskatchewan. It's about 160 kilometers by 200 kilometers for comparison. And that is that same dimension sort of over southern Nova Scotia. In that area, there lives about 1,500 people in northern Saskatchewan. And as you know, more than that live in southern Nova Scotia. So it's really quite a different area for exploration in a lot of aspects. That's a why question. We're not going to, we'll simply ask that, we'll cover that then. So this is about uranium concentration in your granites. And that map on that is, it's kind of gobbledygook. Anyways, this is radon risk in southern Nova Scotia. So that orange chunk with the dark red is mostly granites in southwest Nova Scotia. It has the highest rate. Radon risk in your basement because these granites are a fair amount of uranium in them everywhere, not just where there's uranium deposits. Uranium in drinking water goes from, they're saying here 0.5 parts per billion, but that's probably the detection limit. They can't detect below that. The maximum allowed in drinking water is 20 parts per billion, and 83, I guess, or 830 sort of would be the highest limit detected, the highest detected in somebody's well. So that's 830 is substantially more than 20, so you don't want to drink their water. I don't know whose well that is, so I can't help you with that. But I hear it might be it. We can get to that later. I can tell you that the town of Bridgetown had to drill extra wells for the water supply because they're drilled into high uranium concentrations and they couldn't keep the municipal water supply concentration below 20 parts per billion reliably. It was always kind of just right about at the interval, but we drilled it before I was a municipal councilor. Some of you know that. I'm sorry, this feels really disjointed. Is it terrible? Okay, that's how the brain is a little mushy. So before I was a counselor, they had to drill a couple extra wells. You know, that's not cheap. You know, drinking wells aren't exactly cheap to start with. You know.
Sorry to interrupt, I just want one other question. It's been asked me many times. Is it better to have a drilled well than it is to have a dug well?
For uranium or in general?
For uranium, yes, for the risk.
Well, dug well, much better. We'll get to that
Okay.
at the end, but that's a good point. Remind me, we'll come back to it. Yeah. Like I said, this is my presentation. I just stole the slides like 10 minutes beforehand. That's more of a question. So there's You don't have to talk like that. Where else do I want to go? So, back in March, when this legislation came from the province, I actually went and there's after the second reading of the bill, it goes to what's called it used to be called the Ways and Means Committee, and Public Bills Committee is what they call it now. Yeah, it's always they just changed the name. That's why would you keep anything named the same? And I went and spoke to them, and roughly my reason for going to speak to them wasn't that I opposed mining or even uranium mining explicitly, was that I felt the Department of Natural Resources was not equipped to regulate uranium mining, and mostly for cultural reasons. They don't have a great culture of regulation. We know from various freedom of information requests with forestry groups that they don't follow their own internal policies, let alone enforce policies on forestry companies. So why would we expect to do the same with mining companies? As an example, for mining the Domtar coal mine, not Domtar, it is Domtar, yeah, up in Cape Breton, it's closed 3 times in the 5 years it was open. And after they did closures themselves, Public Works Labor Department comes in and does inspections and would subsequently close them for longer, which tells me that they weren't doing their inspections properly to start with. And self-regulation from industry is okay as long as your industry A wants to be regulated and agrees with the regulation. It also has the capacity to take on that self-enforcement regulation. Mining companies, especially exploration companies, are chronically understaffed and incredibly lean operations. And so something is always going to fall off the plate there. Not that they're malicious and don't care about the environment. Most geologists I know you'd call environmentalists, but environment is what doesn't get checked up on exploration programs that I've worked on, and that's just the way it is. I mean, the people who actually own the claims you're working on, because often the company doing the work isn't the one who owns the claims. They check up and make sure work is done, and that's what it is. So environment tends to be the thing that falls off the cliff. I had a great conversation with them. The opposition MLAs were very interested in what I had to say. I also pointed out a couple of things from the Westward inquiry that, although it's also 35 years old, are probably still relevant, such as mining regulations haven't been reviewed in the context of uranium since this was lifted. In fact, have been reviewed since 2018. And they were okay, but they could definitely be spruced up a little. Another thing I recommended was an independent consultant for the Minister of the Department of Natural Resources. So he wasn't just listening to his own staff, he had an outside source he could consult on things. So that was really good. So there are a few other recommendations that were really good, but I thought that we could use it to go back to. It's a real shame that such a nice document, such a quality document from 35 years ago still had a lot of context and still wasn't being followed. And if you're in the museum industry in Glasgow, Sellerton, technically, they have a wonderful display on the West Ray. They just take a kerchief. You probably won't leave with a dry eye. Anyways, that's that. We can move on to questions. So to the well question there. One of the main reasons uranium is a potential water hazard compared to other things you mine is that when you expose uranium to the oxygen, essentially, and oxidize it, becomes more soluble. That's reversed for iron and a lot of other metals. It's actually very soluble. This difference between solubility when it's oxidized versus reduced is actually sort of the governing principle on almost how all uranium deposits are created, except for the ones that I mentioned. So the reason a dug well is better for uranium concentration is that it's up near the surface and almost all that material is exposed to either oxygen directly from the atmosphere or water that's been directly in contact with the atmosphere very recently. And so that will cause the uranium to migrate down further into the water table. The project I worked on in Labrador, we very rarely had although we had lots of radiation at surface, uranium grades at surface were very intermittent and inconsistent because of that leaching down process. So, unfortunately, there's lots of other problems with having surface wells there. Anybody else?
So if they're, what kind of mining method would they use if they get to that point, nail the mining?
So I mean,
If you get grants, if they can do in situ stuff.
They can use, actually, granite veins, from my research says that granite veins are a good candidate for in situ
So
leaching.
they're not veins,
No, but a granite slab is a good,
or stuff.
is because, well, they say it's because it retains the fluid very well. So when they do, it's not like, I mean, it's similar to fracking, but they drill in and then they inject a solvent to break the uranium up.
Yeah.
And the actual geology of the granite helps them to retain their product solvent that they're pumping in and get more actually out. A lot of that solvent stays in the ground when they do the in situ leaching.
the industry people will tell you all kinds of things that they want to do. I mean, in situ leach is very, very cost effective. If they try to convince me they were doing in situ leach around here in the granites, I would openly mock them and be much less polite than I am right now. You don't have the sort of lateral consistency to try and make a model. When you're trying to define anything in geology, you're, the way I like to describe it is kind of like if I punched a hole in every page of a book, handed you the hole punches and said, what's this book about? You might be able to tell me little things, maybe you'll notice it's a Spider-Man comic or something like that. But you won't, you're missing a lot of detail there. You punch a couple of holes through it, well, we know we get a little bit more, but there's still an awful lot you're missing. A professor once told me, you understand a mineral deposit when you're finished mining it, after you've removed everything. That's when you actually understand a deposit, what's going on. So with in situ leach, you're never opening it up. You're always just drilling holes and injecting things.
So it sounds like you're gonna be, if they do open up and actually mine, they would have to go in and extract the granite and grind it.
Yeah, like to me, that's, I mean, so there's pegmatites, which are explicitly the ones I talked about, like the last part to crystallize are these coarse grain stuff. They don't necessarily have any fractures associated with them. There's also faults and stuff, and cracks that form as the granites cool and contract. That uranium, as the last fluid, will migrate into and fill those up. So those would be good for in situ leach, but the pegmatites are completely impermeable.
And there's nothing like, there's no uranium being found in the silver sandstones formations?
So those, like as far as I'm concerned, are a much better target for uranium deposits. That's a different type of uranium deposit. When you erode the granites, you get this oxide basin I talked about. So they get eroded and then it migrates in grounded surface water into the sandstones. And then it runs into something that causes it to reduce, often organic matter that's buried in the sandstones as well. And that causes it to precipitate falling solution. For example, when I was doing my uranium short course at Dalhousie, they had an old tree stump that would kind of cover this table, and it was about 0.5% uranium. And they're like, well, you know, go look at it, but don't sit on it. The joke is, 0.5% is not that bad. I wouldn't lick it, but it's, you don't want to keep it under your bed. It's not, you can stand around it all day, it's not really that bother you. And 0.5% is pretty high for what they've seen for granite grades and consistency. So like, the grades are better, much more consistent, like laterally consistent than the sandstone deposits would be, and a lot easier to drill and excavate. Not to mention roll front deposits tend to occur in groups, so you'd see maybe a bunch of pits in a single process. I mean, that's me being out of it. In situ leach when I was in university was also just being like sort of pioneered in oil sands. So it's not something I know a whole lot about actually. That's me talking just general geology. There was a question in your which.
Yeah, I had a question. I just want to say that I'm part of, I think we're all part of the special interest group with a special interest in not being irradiated. And I am curious if anyone has had a line of sight or looked into the RFP, the request for proposal to see what kind of regulations or assurances it is requiring of people who are bidding for the exploration. And I think the last statement I'll make is I'm just really tired of having to fight for these sorts of things. And it seems like such common sense to not be doing this. It's really aggravating.
So, had a couple of like, brief conversations with geologists and then other people I knew other geologists, had a conversation with them. And the first look at the RFP, I was like, that's a lot of work for them to do for a bid. A lot more work than you would normally do just to acquire a lease. It's kind of all the reporting, all the planning you do before you have a lease and your year-end reports you have to submit after work is done, all have to be done before that. You had to be doing it in like a month or the work you did a couple of months you've done before that. So I'm gonna be curious to see who submits. I'm pretty sure we can get access to the submissions after they're awarded through a information request. But that's,
I read it should have within 2 days would be entered in before we can request that.
really before the award even.
Yeah.
I mean, because they're
We should be able to get access to them 2 and 7 days from today.
plus 30 days before the launch.
Yeah, that's right.
So it'll still be 30 days before we see anything, which is after we're awarded. What's the original question? Oh, but like, what these are like, so there is one of the assessment qualities, because RFP is like what you do, and all that, what you're gonna do, how you're gonna do it, and then also how we're gonna assess all the bids. And one of the assessments is about whether you're local and your environmental protections and your environmental record as well. So they have a lot of, the province has put a lot of things in there that they can use as votes to not do this. And one of the things that was shared with us last night at West Hands by Mayor Zabian from a meeting he had during the day yesterday with the deputy minister, was that they really emphasized that they don't have to award to anyone. Now, I mean, they don't have to award to anyone for the 3 properties they put up for RSP, but the Millet Lake property is 2,300 hectares, and we counted, just eyeballing it up, 6,400 hectares that are already claimed around that property. The one up here is Lake Black Square in the middle was what was up for RFP. All that green around is the stuff that's already staked by other organizations. So there could be, all that green area is, they can technically be doing work on already. Now I did a search last night at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you have to register drill programs before you do them, only 7 days before you do them, but nobody is registered to drill anything that looks like they're ready to target yet.
There is equipment out there though, we know where it's from. There's bulldozers on the site in East Dallas. Yeah,
I live in East Dallas, I'd love to know where they are.
Yeah, well, I had a woman approach me who lives on Lake Torment
Yeah.
last Thursday, and she says that she saw bulldozers rumbling by her place last week.
But can she be assured it's the mining company?
No, absolutely
No.
not. She
No,
knows,
because
building a road.
There are lots of forestry people in there too building roads, so, just don't come to conclusions that it's the mining company. Right? I mean, I live there, I don't want there either, but let's not jump to conclusions.
Yeah, fair. 64 hectares, go drop in there and have a rig spinning in 48 hours. Want to be clear about it, that's not.
They don't need to make a road.
Well, so normally, the drill goes like a skid, 10 feet wide and 20 feet long. The mast on it actually folds down, so you put on a tractor trailer really easy, and we drag them around with bulldozers, even whether we have roads or not. So they're pretty well, but they're pretty good at moving around. And the guys running bulldozers can make an awful lot of road when they don't need to have a tractor trailer truck come down on it. So, yeah, so I guess my thing is might not know if they want to be surreptitious. Like, they have to do it. But I'd be surprised if anybody's really geared up to drill this summer necessarily. We saw one company that said, oh, we're going to do this drill in 2025, 2026, but they were very generous with talk. I wouldn't put a lot of faith in the actual words that were on that company's website.
So has there been, there's knowledge that uranium exists in these sites already. Viability? Do they, why are they going back in again?
I can speak to that probably.
Susan Corcoran tells me that the area in East Dalhousie, this is in an email that I got from her yesterday, has been explored and was found to be insufficient quality and insufficient quantity for mining. But the RFP still went out.
And
Oh, yeah, you've got to explore them, so.
But the market may have changed. Like maybe the market is different now.
yeah,
So if we want to talk about market and stuff like that,
we can.
I have something prepared to address that. But if there's questions like, you know.
I mean, I can speak to market on.
Yeah.
So there's also been massive overhauls in how you assess a deposit for economics from the 70s. So the first thing any of us look at when you're looking at an old core from the 70s and stuff like that, look at lots of that, you go, this is what they said about it, this is what's there and what's real and what's not, if I call that the same sort of thing, but then also analysis are done very, very differently. In the 1970s, you did analysis by smashing that rock up, dissolving it in acid, and then like sitting there like you did high school chemistry sort of stuff, where now we do the same thing, smash it up with acid, and then run it through an instrument, and it gives a spectrometer, and it gives us parts per billion for 50 elements, like that. So it's very, very accurate today. It wasn't back then. So generally, you take the old deposit numbers and go, well, that's not. I'm off the top of that and go from there. So it's there were numbers that was explored back then, so we know there's stuff there. I don't pay much attention to the numbers when I was doing the project.
I have a question. You talked about in situ, and that's being proposed for the crypto area of mine, I believe. Is that?
So I mean, nobody's talking about, I tend to not talk about mine types because it's all speculative.
Oh,
And
okay.
that comes down to even what the company who has the rights for has experience with.
Okay, because my question was, what about the alternative, which is just open pit mining?
Yeah.
And that's what I understood, that Millet Brook is going to have to be. And so, can you speak to that and the differences of the deposits of those two areas? If there is a difference?
So up in,
Geological
so up in River John, it's all sandstone. So you've got, think about sandstones as being a layer, like much more like a page of a book. So even if you don't have, you'll have sandstones that are nice and permeable, and then maybe you have a shale layer of granite that doesn't pass, stuff like that. Where the granites are, think about a big block with a bunch of cracks through it. You guys know what granites are. You're not running a lot of water through that. If I go way back, pore space in a granite's maybe 1%. The sandstones up in River John are probably 30% pore space. So there's a lot more space for fluid in it. Yeah, so you have, there's very stylistically different.
So is there different techniques for the different types of deposits? I think that's what I was trying to get.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even if you open pit, you do them differently. So, I mean, it comes down to how consistent the uranium is when you break it into blocks and stuff like that.
My question is more around, okay, so we're opening the ground,
Right.
and what about the dust particulates? That's gonna be an issue no matter which type of mining that they use.
Anything you're blasting rock, you have a dust issue, they're pretty good at mitigating it. I've seen the numbers from Northern Ontario and from Northern Saskatchewan, and their dust levels are pretty low. But that doesn't, so my problem with uranium mining isn't that they can't necessarily do it safe in that paper. It's what happens when somebody screws up.
Yeah.
That's my personal philosophy, and there are places when they have a good culture of regulation, experience regulating well, okay, you can do stuff, and when you remove these things farther away from people, great, that's, there's an acceptable risk now. The province of Nova Scotia doesn't have a good record, doesn't have a culture of regulation, and I frankly just don't trust them to do it. my major sticking point as a geologist.
And it's all relative to zero. We have none of the radioactive dust in the air right now with no radio operations in the product.
And all these things come down to, we can give you information, I can give you information all night, but you have to weigh for yourself, where is my risk, cost, benefit, reward on everything, right? You can tell your counselors where your position is when you're done, but they can't make that assessment for you. So we'll go back here, and I've seen a couple of hands and.
Assuming, assuming it's feasible, approximately how much tonnage of waste are you looking at for a ton of uranium?
Oh, like you. That's really hard to, so open pits go anywhere from like say, 1 ton of waste rock, which is considered not ore, to 1 ton of ore, and then uranium, you're talking maybe 0.5% of it's actually uranium, and the rest would be waste rock. The uranium around here, currently, I did the math on this, a kilogram of uranium, there is, I'll assume I did the math right, but roughly 63 grams of other radiogenic material that is also there for every kilogram of uranium.
And that stays in the tailings or goes down the road?
That would mostly stay in the tailings. So you take a ton of rock, you put it over here, you take a ton of rock, you run it through your milling process, a kilogram of uranium, say it comes, 0.5% would give you 5 kilograms of uranium, which would then give you 300 grams of radionuclides that would be in your waste product. I think I just did that. Did that help your question at all?
So that's about 2/3 of a pound.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't speak freely.
That's okay.
I like to refer to them.
That's about 2/3 of a pound of radioactive material.
Right, about a 6 pounds of
And
uranium.
they're saying here,
But,
we'll just put that out there.
Yeah, sprinkle it around.
I mean, it's, contains, we won't get into that. The back there, the green shirt,
Hello, my name
Oh.
is, how are you doing? My name is Michelle Palmer, I'm from the Annapolis Valley. We were just driving by and we saw your meeting. I was part of the committee that the province organized to talk about fracking and uranium mining. The data that was given at that committee on that day is declaring that the concentration of the ore here is going to be 1,000th of what it is in Saskatchewan. So that means for every pound of waste, you're going to have 1,000 times more waste here than you have in. So the price, somebody mentioned the price, there will be no money being made by this. So what is the reason for this? Is where there's uranium, there might be other things that they've not been able to explore. So opening this venue allows them, so even if they don't find uranium, if they find the other products, the critical minerals right now, for robots, for drones, for war, this is what the direction is about. And also Canada's just declared itself a nuclear-armed country.
Oh, wow.
We've just declared ourselves that we're gonna buy a nuclear submarine, and we're gonna start going around with nuclear bombs ready to be fired. This never existed before for Canada. So now, we're at the point we're not even admitting to the population, we're going nuclear. We allowed nuclear warships in manufacture in 2019. It was prohibited for any American or foreign ship with nuclear arms to come to. We allowed it in 2019. Nobody went blue. Everybody went to visit the submarine. We must stop this attitude that we can make money off uranium when actually what it's about is creating nuclear power station that will get the AI that we're creating now with our new Minister of AI, Evan Solomon. He's going to create the Canadian identity by making sure that the AI system can monitor everything in Canada. So they need strong electrical grid wherever those bases are. There's gonna be one in Ontario and Alberta. So I was part of that meeting. The mineral representative guy that day, I forget Cody, I forget his name, he pretty much lied at the committee. He said there is no health harm when it's done right. Well, first thing, you do not try to get uranium out of basalt, because it's a hard rock, you gotta pulverize it to get in it. Where, like in Saskatchewan, you've got a very fine particulate that you can just separate it without creating too much waste. And so there will not be this possibility. And what's lacking in that team there is you cannot get radiation out of water. Once it's in water, we have no technique for taking radiation out of water. So Kings County, or my county, Annapolis, put the landfill site right on the edge of Lunenburg County, because all the residue was going in the LaHave River. We couldn't have it go into the Annapolis River. I was the one who stopped the asheville that underwater about 25 years ago. This is the same thing here. Annapolis County is not doing anything about this site because it won't reach the watershed. It's far from the valley, so right now my county's going, what's uranium mine? So,
Oh, Michelle, actually, that's not true. They passed a motion yesterday at committee of the whole to ask the province for a pause, right? So, and 1,000 times concentration for our Saskatchewan here is a bit high. If you took the highest rate in Saskatchewan and compared it to background radiation here, if I've just done the math right in my head, that would be about 1,000 times.
that's what was told at the committee.
No, that's fine.
That's what they said at the committee. so.
Cigar Lake, which is the richest uranium deposit in the world, its high grade section is about the size of this room when you do the math on it. The rest of it drops back down to like the 10% sort of thing.
That's right, there's
So-
4 areas that are
Right,
more
so-
concentrated than others.
10% is about 100 times the concentration I worked on in Labrador, and it would be about 100 times what you have here. So that's correct. So we want to be really careful with our numbers here, and I'm sure I'm not being more committal to giving you guys information on your questions. Is that
Okay, well.
it's hard to give you a direct answer. Like, you're asking really good questions, but it's like I have a hard time explaining them before your geologist. Like they're really good, really technical questions that people spend literally years evaluating how they're going to mine a deposit. The last drill program I drilled was 2012. They celebrated the mine opening, and we've pretty much finished the drilling for that project. We evaluated the entire ore body, and we started a metallurgical study on it in 2012, and they celebrated the opening of that mine last month. And that's not held up by regulation or anything. That is just the mining cycle. It takes a long time to evaluate how you want to open a pit, how you're going to extract, which parts you're going to mine first, because that all comes into your economics and how you pay off the debt load you have to set these things up and stuff like that. I really cannot emphasize how big these things are and the complexity that goes behind them. 3 years in the industry now is just getting feet wet in a lot of aspects, and there's aspects I would never have touched. Yeah, as far as like hydrogeology, as far as I'm concerned, that's magic.
So yeah, my last point is the uranium mining is again another door to open so that they can go look for these other minerals where there's uranium possibility.
So,
That's,
but it's a very good point there.
Yeah.
So I haven't gotten access to the research papers that were done on that by one of my professors actually, like 35 years ago. Because some deposits are probably associated with uranium levels in the background. I don't think anybody's come across one yet, as far as we hit an ore body of this and there was too much uranium in it to do anything, because they're forced to report that sort of stuff. But there's the tin deposit down in this way, down by Yarmouth. That was quite big back in the 80s. But it closed mostly because the tin price crashed after some much bigger, richer deposits came online in Brazil that were easier to mine. So there's, like granite, uranium deposits, nobody's really mined them since the 80s because,
They still want to check on it down there, don't they? Have people looking to get.
oh yeah, looking for stuff and looking, reevaluating things.
Yeah.
I mean, so the problem with these mines when you start them and they don't last very long, is they mine all the richest ore and then they go belly up because they were trying to pay off their debt. So then to come back and reopen these things, it's much more difficult because all the best part of the ore body is gone to pay off your finance. Anyways, Allison, you had a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, I find the comparison between Virginia and Nova Scotia to be the most compelling reason why we should be very, moving with a lot of caution. And my understanding is that, Virginia has been upholding its ban because there's kind of no precedent for mining uranium in that wet a climate.
Right.
With the amount of floods and storms and whatever that they have. So, can you just talk a little bit about that like what do you know about the concerns about containment?
So this was one of the first things I'd heard, well, so I've been back at this pretty hard for 2 or 3 weeks now, and I want to get to bits and pieces of it. And this is one of the first things I heard that really caught my attention of like, I've never heard that approach before necessarily. So what we do know is Virginia, like they just had massive flash floods there since we had the massive flash flood in Hants County, right? Wiped out one of the interstates. They said it should be a couple of years before they get it rebuilt. So to me, that's a real red flag on tailings dams. We had a tailings dam collapse in BC in 2014, the Mount Holly gold mine. 21 million tons of water and tailings went a creek into a lake. The creek was about 1 meter wide before the tailings dam burst, and it wiped out all the trees in the path about 100 meters wide. It's pretty much a wonder that nobody died. And it was due entirely to poor engineering and poor oversight by the mine. And they labeled a couple of, it's a very good report actually. It's very accessible, as far as for lay people to get in and read. It gets into a couple of technical pieces, of course, but a lot of these public reports on accidents are actually very easy to read, as long as you don't mind spending 150 pages on it, sort of thing. Anyways, I digress. So to me, these big rainfall events are a real question for mining in either of our jurisdictions, Nova Scotia or Virginia. It was something that I was starting to chase down Nova Scotia Power on, both their hydro dams in Annapolis County. We have a series of hydro dams. They're all just earthen dams, lakes across the edge of the Silk Mountain, and most of them are only a couple kilometers before you hit the residential areas in the valley floor, and quite a substantial elevation drop. And they told me that they've moved from planning 100-year flood events to 1,000-year flood events, and they've just started doing that in the last couple of years. They didn't know how much information on that. Share with you guys if you want. I've not had time to go through it, but yeah, I can forward it on to you guys. What else? Yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned that creek that filled up with whatever, but that's toxic. Now we're talking radioactive with uranium. It's almost like apples and oranges.
Yeah.
We don't, how I can't even visualize what that would be like.
So, and since this got brought up, I don't know, thought of a way to try and reference to that. Like, I've seen landslides that are 20 million tons in BC, and they're kilometers long and stuff. Like, if you've never been to BC and some of the big slides, Frank slide's one that's quite common for people to see. That was 40 million tons. Yeah, 40-ish million tons, I think. So we're talking, half the size of that. And Frank's slide came down when it ran a couple of kilometers, but it completely obliterated a town that was there. These are really big events. So a normal tailings dam for, say, a gold mine is kind of modeled after a river estuary. So all that mud that gets washed out in front of winter, they kind of model that, and it turns a lot of metals as soon as they hit the ocean, form these more stable compounds. And so even if you mobilize the mud, you're not necessarily putting all that metal and byproduct into the solution. A lot of modern gold mines also turn all their sulfuric acid into gypsum. So you've got relatively stable gypsum. I mean, putting 20 million tons of gypsum into a lake is not great for the lake. It's probably gonna kill all the fish and everything there, but, you know, it'll recover in 50 years as opposed to if you put 20 million tons of radioactive material into a lake, there's gonna be a long time before something lives there, right? So you're right, as I said before, my problem is not what they're doing, the consequences of them making a mistake.
My daughter worked, Superfund site in, New Mexico, or eastern Arizona. And she actually worked with her partner and developed catalysts to extract the from water.
Right.
So it's been done. But she also sent me a book because when it was going to uranium mines, this was before the 50s and stuff, for alcohol. And you get the story of what long-term effect of, you know, radiation is cancers, lots of problems that go on.
It's not free.
It's not very-
That's a lasting legacy too. When you start digging into uranium, and you start doing your own research, the Navajo case studies are right there at the top.
Yeah. They had no protection.
Nothing.
Even nothing.
Nothing. We did our book, Saskatchewan, sleeping on that uranium as they were coming down the highway.
But like, if you're a radiation worker and wearing a dosimeter all the time, your maximum exposure for 1 year is 50 millisieverts. Whereas you and I, the recommended maximum dosage per year is 1 millisievert. I mean, there's a couple of differences there because they're being measured and one off, so you don't have, you know, random citizens kind of exposed to any sort of level that you're not measured. But the threshold for Joe Pro public is very low compared to what is considered to be safe for radiation wearers. Yeah. And I should say, the maximum's 50 per year, but only 100 for every 5 years, so you have to, it's your, the main thing with radiation is your cumulative effective dose over your lifetime, which is your risk for all the fun stuff that comes with radiation, such as, you know, seeing in the dark, blowing hands.
Well, she also said it was reading girls.
Oh,
Oh, that's the range jaw?
Yeah.
Yeah. The clock faces?
Yeah.
All the talk one.
Terrifying stuff.
I think I got to about the age of 30, maybe not even there, when I realized that humans are just terrible people, and I had to stop reading this stuff. Yeah, Michelle. Something else there.
So, what I was gonna say about the Saskatchewan mining, it was being used as an example at the committee in Nova Scotia. And there was a fact brought up that the Nova Scotia Environmental Network presented to their government a 69-page of all the problems with that mine, which has never been brought here to Nova Scotia. You can just Google Saskatchewan mining, Saskatchewan Environmental Network, there's a 69-page full exploration of how far the contamination in water has gone from where the mine is. Almost 300 kilometers in one direction. So that's not safe. It's only safe because there's nobody there.
Yeah, that's really good to know. So one of the struggles has been for the bunch of us who have had the luxury of having the time to spend too much time reading this stuff. It's not just reading the information and understanding the information, but finding the information. For example, I found last night in one of my searches that from a newspaper article by the CBC that as private landowners, if you allow them to do exploration on your land, part of your negotiation with them is what they have to do for remediation. And the province's policy, according to the CBC article, is that the province's policy is it's up to you to decide what gets remediated, not the province, and that which I thought was terrible because what do you guys all know about remediating a drill hole? Anybody? So, The regulation says in Nova Scotia that all the drill holes have to be cemented to 3 meters of crude bedrock. Everything above that has to be cemented. And then anything that is uranium, intercepts uranium mineralization also has to be cemented. So if you're doing uranium exploration, I would say the whole hole has to be infilled with uranium. So you can call there's natural resources auditor or something you can call. Phone number, I'll put that on Facebook or soon. I just got that email back. Oh, it's sitting back. Way at the top.
Yeah, okay, assuming the province, issues, exploration permits, where does that leave the province of Excellent legally? Is there any chance of getting that license stopped? Or will the mining company say, you gave us a license, if you want us out of here, you owe us $1 million or so, for breach of contract or something like that?
Well, so this is sort of, one of the questions that was asked me, how did you what can we do about it? I didn't have answers to it, but when I walked away, I thought about it some more. I think what we're doing is kind of pretty much the best thing we do right now is make the province painfully aware of it. So it's really easy for them to just not accept an RFP, as I said, with an offset was there. I'm not optimistic we'll get that, but I'm becoming more optimistic we'll get that. If that doesn't go, I think we're into a 2 or a 4 year fight the next election.
I mean, getting a license rescinded.
So,
I mean, what's
rescinded is probably, would give them would probably expose them to legal liability. They probably have a lot of options to not renew a license. There is some, it's not what I focused on with reading regulations.
We don't have that.
Right, but it's,
Property owners don't have that.
no, we don't know what it's, yeah.
No, it's 6 inches down or something.
I mean, if this
So
goes
you have to
in,
go by mineral rights.
You can get freehold mineral rights over your own property. You can try to get freehold mineral rights over your own property. It's going to cost you an arm and a leg for a lawyer to do that. Basically turning your own house into a mineral lake.
Yeah.
That's one route. We've been talking about seeking a court injunction. That's what some of the fundraising is for, is to get a judge to just step in and say, everybody hold your horses. That's probably, from my perspective, that's probably our best legal path there right now, is an injunction. It's worked out.
has this guy gotten access to the original, McLeod's report that recommended the moratorium?
It's very available. Yeah, I haven't read it, but
Oh, it's, how do you find that?
I think it comes up. It's on the Facebook group somewhere, on the industry. It's also, I imagine, just Googling the pre-report project. It was one of the documents that people brought over pretty fast, so I assume it's accessible.
Can be found, it's been digitized and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's stuff going back even from the 90s in Europe, like really good reports. There's one called the Wismut report that has a lot of really good data in there, just sort of like what the impacts of uranium mining can do to a rural population. It sort of shows, that's what we're getting the 400 kilometer from. It sort of shows the web way of how it works its way into your daily life.
Didn't have something to back it.
Oh yeah, there is tons of precedent and reports out there for exactly this. There's just not a really good analog in our country because we don't do uranium close to people. So it's kind of, we have European analog, we have African analogs, we don't have anything here.
We're in the West.
That's right.
Africans are people.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
You have to
the
remember.
register says that's how we in the West tend to treat them.
Yeah. Or the indigenous people here, same thing.
We did, yeah, like I said, we're terrible friends, not property. So, yeah.
So for a letter writing campaign, or writing a letter, what would be like the 3 main talking points that you really?
There are letters, form letters already online in the Facebook group. If you can't find one, I was gonna say, yeah, ask somebody to send it to you. Or you can email me. It's straightforward. Yeah.
The example of the one of the Central MLA in Kings County, just an example.
Yeah.
There's a website called the Dirt Gang, and they have,
That's right, dirtgang.ca.
yeah, they have, talking points to use for letters.
That's a new one on me.
I think it's important for people to also understand, I think we probably did touch on it a bit, but how dangerous just the exploration is.
Yeah, well, I mean, so, in theory, you put a hole in the ground, you allow all this, like I said, oxygenated water down there and stuff like that. It shouldn't migrate very far, so it's just, you know, your neighbors, if they're drilling on your property, it shouldn't go very much farther than your neighbors. But like I said, uranium, as long as it stays oxidized, it stays in solution and migrates along. You don't really know where it'll run into something that will cause it to come out of solution at. And there's all these uranium deposits around the province that are in the sandstones, kilometers away from the ground.
Could we use Harrietsfield as an example of what happened there?
I've skimmed the lawsuit, the judgment in Harrietsfield, and I haven't found out where the exploration holes tie into that yet. There is reference to them there, but I haven't found the details yet. The main thing in Harrietsfield was they also had a construction and demolition cell there and a waste transfer station there. And so the gypsum, the drywall, which is full of gypsum, is calcium sulfate. And the sulfate ions, when they dissolved and went into the water, sulfate makes uranium more soluble. So that caused the uranium to migrate into the nearby wells. Yeah. Yeah.
I was wondering, there's been talk about RFPs, things going around like that, and they've been awarded. How much do you know about the companies who are going to be involved?
We know nothing about who is making RFP contributions. We know of one company that has a bunch of claims around the province adjacent to the thing, to the RFPs. That's really common. Anytime somebody finds something, everybody claims around it in case it extends underground. Usually the part you find is the stuff at surface and then deposit.
Right.
Expanding there.
And, you know, most industries these days, it seems, are very consolidated. Are there any usual suspects you would imagine would be involved in the process?
I don't follow the industry that closely.
Okay.
And mining's kind of very pyramidy. So there's 10 companies in the world who kind of probably do 75% of the mines in the world. If they aren't the primary owners, they're a major stakeholder in all those mines. And then you have these companies that are intermediates that are still really exploration oriented, but maybe have a couple of small mines that pay for their exploration project. And then you've got thousands of companies at the bottom that are anywhere from one person to 50, who are raising most of their money on the stock exchange and through various financing mechanisms, but they only do exploration, they have zero revenue.
Are there any specialized financiers that
Oh,
tend
yeah.
to be in on this, or is this more distributed across it? Doesn't? Okay. And, oh, Canadian Pension Plan Investment Board? Yeah. Great.
I mean, there's all kinds of, so like one of the companies I worked for, we had individual people that, it was nice, because there was me, the geologist, and the senior geologist, and he's a guy with more experience than me, and the CEO, and we had a couple of office staff. So, you know, the CEO would be like, yeah, we're going for go down to the local pub, and sit at the board of directors, as a young geologist, you just lap up everything you hear, while the 4 board members sit there and make the board meeting in front of them. But I also heard our CEO one time go, yeah, so-and-so said, he can't absorb any more shares, blah, 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 blah. All the guy was just like, what do you mean? We've got that kind of exposure, and he's, 80 years old, blah, blah, blah. He just kind of lost his shit for a moment. Well, this guy explained that he had this huge kind of liability and exposure to the market. There's individual people who are sometimes big investors, and sometimes it's small equity firms, and it's like the number of players and how much intertwined they are is, even when you're in the industry, you have to keep track of the amount of your concept.
And then in terms of buyers, like, in terms of the size of the market, are there a lot of players in that, or is it a
Like,
small number?
who would be selling uranium on the internet?
The uranium.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
Maybe it's a good time to, do you wanna jump up now?
Yeah.
She's gonna give us some information. This is a quick chat on the Everwind project and the adjacency with the uranium activity that's going on in the province, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, there's that, and that's pretty quick because it's still a work in progress. However, to answer some of your questions, I came across an excellent article talks about the global perspective on uranium right now. So basically, COP28, which was, I think, the most recent COP conference that they had, 31 developed countries signed on to a pact to triple nuclear energy by 2050. So, when we're talking about Tim Houston, and, you know, our MLA's not understanding this, or, you know, it's all coming from the top down. So there's right now, this article that I will reference more from, I have put it on the site if anybody wants it, come see me. But your question about who would the buy, you know, the big miners be. So we have TAMCO, which really is a derivative of the Crown Company years ago when uranium was a big deal. They just basically got kicked out of Kazakhstan. So they're looking to come back home. France lost its alliances with Namibia, which is an African country that produces a lot. So France is in a pickle. Okay, and that's just right now.
Largest uranium processing facility in the world is in France.
Uranium processing, as well as they're probably the highest nuclear energy user in Europe, right? Some of the other European countries have stopped it, but they're going to come up again. Our friend, I don't see him anymore, who talked about this is all going to AI. He's right. You know, they need a stable power source to get AI up and running. I also reread the announcement made by Donald Trump when he first got in power, declaring a national energy emergency in the United States. And so he put it out to the community to go to get the Army Corps to basically lift or run around all the environmental policies across the nation and open up some of these dormant mines. Okay? Canada, in this article, is basically what it's talking about, is that there's a bifurcation going on with uranium right now, and this article is even headlined, and all roads lead to Canada. So Canada is also, and Mark Carney has said, we want to be an energy superpower. So again, all I really want to reiterate is that overall of this article, please find it tweeted, and you will understand a lot better that this, again, is top down. So in my opinion, nonpartisan is that Tim Houston just said yes, okay? And that's why the only thing we're going to get from our MLAs in our province is just the talking points they're going to get into us. So we have quite a fight on our hands, and maybe Nova Scotia is not feasible, and this is what I wanted to talk about Everwind. Feasibility for getting uranium out of the ground in Nova Scotia is like barely alive, okay? A lot of components go into it, but one of the main components that go into the finished product of uranium, which is called yellow cake, that's what they package up, put in barrels, and ship off. There's a final rinse process. Once the solution, everything's dissolved, the final rinse product is an aqua, so it's a mix of water and aluminum gas. Aluminum gas is mainly produced in Quebec and Ontario, and of course lots out west and from Saskatchewan, and it is shipped all over the country as needed for different purposes. Everwind will be producing the gas. So we would have a local source, and that just might be one of those little boxes that got checked off to say, well, we can supply this. And Everwind is not up to speed yet in producing the ammonia that is going to be liquefied and shipped over to Europe or whatever market they can find. They're going to need a ramp-up customer. So we're talking like 2026 earliest. They already have that product here ready to go. So that concerns me. And that's the kind of research that I do. The other concern that I have with Everwind, and I just moved back to Nova Scotia in 2022, so to put my head into what's going on here has taken a while, but it's all kind of coming together. Everwind put up on, I don't know if they call it Bear Lake, the West Hants Bridge where they put all the wind turbines. Okay, they say that's one of their 3 in phase 1 of wind farms that's going to feed Point Tucker. Well, that was questionable. That's a long, like a long road for them to transmit power from that. So I had some concerns about why would they put the windmills there? Is it an offset, to give power to Windsor or other parts of Nova Scotia? What was that? Nothing was said. The Millet Brook, one of the sites that they do want to mine, and it's been talked about for a long time, even by the nuclear agency, it's been talking about it for 3 years, and saying, well, Nova Scotia's just got to get their act together and let it ban. Okay, so it's been known. If that is open mine, and you have wind turbines in close proximity to the open pit mine, which actually, a lot of that uranium is already where the windmills are, what do you think is going to happen to the dust particulate? So, it's just another piece of the puzzle. It's a dot to connect. It's not about finding out all the facts. We're many, and we have different people who have different expertise in different things. But when you're talking to neighbors, friends, and trying to convince them that this is a big deal, it just gives you a little bit more information to help you understand that there is no safe way to do this. There never was, there never is, and there never will be in the near future. And so we have not only the hydrological issues that we have in Nova Scotia that moves the stuff around, now we have turbines on top of it. So I just wanted to add that context. And again, I can't really put it up on the screen, but the name of the article, if anybody wants to jot it down, it was put out by McDonaldLaurier.ca. And you're going to love the title. A fork in the road. As bifurcation hits the global uranium industry, the secure path leads to Canada. Okay, so, it's not really that biased. It's definitely a worthy read to help people understand, that this is coming from the top down. Okay?
It's not just uranium, lithium, gold.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly. However, I really don't think it would be feasible for anybody to open up with the veiled intention to look for uranium and look for other products. Okay, because it's not cost effective to do it that way. If they want gold, if they want titanium, if they want other of these rare earth minerals that I don't understand or have nailed down in my head, they wouldn't use the excuse that we're coming in for uranium. But mining, in general, in Nova Scotia, in areas where there are high concentrations of uranium, is just not dangerous. But if that's your point, I totally agree.
Anytime you get breaking, but this whole area, right, South Shore, Jansen, is in Maguma Formation, which is stuff broken off from Morocco, and is a highly mineralized source of all our gold mines and other mines.
Yeah, so,
The
to your
history
point,
has been going, the history's been there since the 1800s, mining for gold, et cetera, et cetera.
right,
And
we
the
don't have a
legacy is
ban,
in the woods right now.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
but we don't have a ban on gold mining,
No, but
right?
when there's lithium, gold, uranium, there's different,
Yes, there are.
different outfalls.
Yeah.
Whatever kind of mining that's going to take place.
That's right.
We're not a mineral extraction province. We're lumber and lobster. This is crazy. There was a time where there was coal and there was all kinds of extraction done here. We're living with the legacy now. We need.
I grew up in Sudbury.
Okay, so you know, so big nickel town, you know all about it, right? Yeah, very familiar. And I'm sure you've lost some friends, you know, to the industry in Sudbury. You know, we're not Sudbury. You know, this is the South Shore of Nova Scotia. It's Christmas trees and lobsters. You know, it's crazy we're even having this conversation.
It is crazy we're even having this conversation, and
Bushland was, that's in the middle of nowhere. And they just opened up, that was one of the better gold producing mines. Back in 1800, it was one massive.
Yeah.
Hugely massive.
You're right. It is ludicrous. I cannot find the logic. However, I can do the MBA level of work to scrutinize it from a financial perspective, from a geopolitical perspective, and I found no good answers that they are either. It just doesn't make sense, except there's a big panic on right now. There's a lot of trade, global trade, geopolitical, war posturing going on. I believe that it's just like Canada wants to beat the States. Canada wants to say, well, we've got more uranium than you do, so that's leverage for us to talk about trade, and then they're doing it with Europe at the same time. I'm not saying this is going to go away, but it might. It really, really might. But we should not go back to sleep. So that was kind of all I wanted to. And if anybody had any questions specifically about this, or they want to see this article, come see me. Go ahead.
I just want to say to everybody, like, we're talking about uranium tonight, but in my personal opinion, you know, it's a war against our health and our environment, not just with uranium. Our food is poisoned, you know, I've been at meetings, we can only have so many chickens, blah, blah, blah. You know, this is a big issue, and people have to bring knowledge to themselves. These meetings are great, but, you know, tonight is uranium, what's next week? You know, the world, our leaders do not care about the people. It's not, you know, so I think we have to stand up in everywhere we can and speak our minds and protect ourselves, join together. You know, they don't care about people. In my mind, this is just my opinion, but like I said, our food, everything is poison, and then they charge us more tax to help the situation, when here we go, we're mining now, you know, and they're talking about saving the environment.
Something.
Thank you for that. No, I don't disagree, and that is a really good point. We have to take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
We really, really do.
From
If anybody says, oh, don't worry about it, you know, this is green, this is net zero, this is gonna save the world. There are people whose hearts are broken, that they trusted that the government was taking care of them. Go easy on everybody. Take time, take for yourselves, but learn. You're gonna have to learn what you're up against, and if we need it, we can get anti-slap legislation for the ones who are gonna be the boots on the ground, like literally coming to stop somebody from getting on someone's property. If it gets to that, there will be people that are ready to do that, right? And there are ways and there are means to protect each other and able to stop this. Let's hope it doesn't get to that point.
Brad, you want to speak?
Anybody else have?
Brad.
I just had a quick point. A friend of mine who couldn't make it tonight, is some scheduling conflicts, wanted to let me know and let everyone here know. She has some connections with the South Shore Council of Canadians, and they might have some funds available for some kind of direct action support.
Okay.
So they might be a person that we can, or an organization that we can contact.
Okay.
For the direct
Great.
action that we need to take.
That's awesome. I'll take that contact information tonight. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap it up.
Excuse me, Brad wants to speak.
Of course, yeah.
To both those points there, we're already in contact with the Council of Canadians.
Perfect.
But also politicians. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love beating up on politicians too. From my 4 years of politics though, and our wonderful councillors up here, all four of who three I knew beforehand. I can think of maybe one or two municipal councils I met that I wasn't 100% convinced that they had people's best interests in hand at all the time. Every provincial and federal politician I met and had conversations with always we're there for the very best of reasons, as best I could tell. I will say, even just 4 years of municipal council, it was amazing. I noticed 2 years in, I had to work hard to not have my perspective drifting too far away from people and into higher up like that. And it's really, you're so involved in that sort of organization. That if you ever worked in a big corporation, when you get that separation from your work to the outside world, it can really distort your perspective. And so I think a big part of this is not so much ridiculing and persecuting our politicians, but just making sure they understand their concerns, and that our concerns are not just legitimate, but they're also fear-based. Like, I'm here, this is my 5th or 6th meeting like this, talking about geology. I've spent a lot of hours reading, my own time doing this, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm here running public meetings that the province should have run themselves.
100%. Yeah.
So I mean, it's and that's part of it. So we'll go around, and like I said, I can give you information and facts. Sometimes you ask really hard questions that I can't answer nicely. But take time and you talk to your MLA, you talk to your councillors, you talk to MPs, and just be like, look, I don't like this. Nobody's told me anything, so why should I be on board with it? Maybe you wanted to, if they've done some education, there might not be a problem.
Right.
But to me, that's also kind of the entire point, is they haven't done education, they haven't done anything about it, they haven't tried to inform us what they want to do for our benefit, whether we think it's a benefit or not. I would almost certainly say that Mr. Houston thinks he's doing something to benefit all of us, and he relies a whole lot on his advisors as well, right? Like, the one thing I went into municipal politics not fully aware of, was the sheer breadth of information and stuff I would have to deal with. It is even worse at the provincial level. So,
Yeah. Well, and thank you, and I'm not trying to point at any local.
No, I know that.
Right, and like you said, it comes from the top down, and that's the problem. Like people that don't have any, they're so far up there that they don't care about where we are. All of us here are living in a rural area. We don't even want to live in Halifax. It's too big. We don't like it. Whatever. So we chose this lifestyle, and now it's you can't hide anymore.
No, it's absolutely
right.
It's so true. It's so true.
Thank you.
Okay, so the important thing to remember is this crosses party lines, this transcends logic. So we're looking for bipartisan, unilateral opposition and resistance to this project. Thank you everybody for coming tonight. Oh yes, please sign up on the sign-up sheets. If you want to sign, if you want to volunteer, and if you want to be part of the mailing list of the phone tree. Thank you everyone for coming. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.